Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Wheelchair Activist. This is a podcast hosted by me, Emma Vogelman, where I interview some pretty amazing disabled people and some amazing allies of the disabled community. In this episode, we are chatting to the one and only Samantha Renke. You will definitely know who Samantha is. She's an amazing broadcaster, actress, columnist, and just all around one of my absolute favorite people. Today, we're going to be talking to her about all things disability and her upcoming book, The Best Thing Since Sliced Bread. Can't wait to jump into this conversation.
What I think would benefit disabled people is to, again, like you said, not be bothered and to be seen as human, because we're not. You know, a lot of the things that I've experienced are what most people will experience at one time or another. Why be a sheep when you can be a unicorn? And I feel like my disability is my unicorn.
Samantha, thank you so much for joining me on The Wheelchair Activist. I've been so looking forward to having this conversation with you for so long.
I know. And I feel really bad because I think I've swapped and changed this appointment on a number of occasions, and you've been so gracious and courteous. So finally, we made it happen. So thank you, because I think when I announced that I was having, or even before I think I announced having my book, you messaged me and you were like, I would love to get you on the podcast. And I was like, oh, perfect timing, because I'm going to announce my book launch. So yeah, I'm glad that we finally made it happen. What's that expression? Like, I'm really bad at expressions. I'm half German and my mum was rubbish at expressions. What is it? What is it like? You know, if you wait long enough for something, it's worth the wait. I don't know.
That makes sense.
Is that it? Yeah, I'm sure there's an expression in there somewhere. Also, I don't know, my cats are now telling me off because I've been preoccupied all day. I got home, I've been just finishing the last day of my audiobook. I got home quite, about 1:30, and then I went out for some lunch, and then I came back and the cats were like, oh, she's finally back home. I can have my mum all to myself. And then I sat on bloody TikTok. So I'm now on TikTok, which I hate, but I feel like I kind of have to be there because everyone who's cool is there. So I sat there. No, I'm not even going to lie. I sat there for nearly an hour trying to do one bloody TikTok. I kept doing it wrong. So yeah. And now I'm talking to you. So the cats are literally like, what the heck? What the heck is going
Well, hey, cats always come first, as do my dogs. Dogs always come first. But
absolutely.
So many things, even just in that I want to talk to you about. But first of all, should I be on TikTok? Because because I had a friend who's I think she's Gen Z, and she was telling me that anyone who's anyone in disability is on TikTok. And I went on it and I texted my friend minutes after I downloaded it and said, I think I hate it.
Yeah. And so I was like you. So then I downloaded it and I was like, no, hell no. And then obviously because of the book launch, I was a bit like, okay, potentially this could be quite prosperous, but I looked at it as like a business exchange, as I actually do with all my social media. I genuinely believe that if I wasn't in the public eye, or even because I'm now and again, very rarely, I must add, I make money from some of my Instagram posts. So if it weren't for that, if I couldn't see some sort of positive, tangible outcome, then I would probably close everything down. Because I'm such a hurt. We'll go on to that a bit later. Contrary to popular belief, I am quite a solace kind of individual. However, I'm on it, and I think I've warmed to it a little bit. And only because I've successfully posted about five posts. But I don't know. It's just another thing to think about, and because because I'm not striving to be, an Instagram star. This is not where I see my life going. I'm a little bit half-hearted about it. So I think, and I'm a bit like that with all social media. Now and again, I love the interactions and I love the conversations and I love learning from other people. Don't get me wrong. But I think, it can be all consuming. And I have an addictive personality. And I think social media is just another drug, I've done the binge drinking, I've done the chain smoking, I've done all the rest of all the naughty things, and now social media is like the more sociable, more socially acceptable drug. And now I'm a bit like, I've got to really, really watch myself to not just get absolutely obsessed with it. I think because I'm such a people person, I like to be present when I'm somewhere. And I don't, if I could, I mean, maybe this is something I need to do. If I could hire someone literally to follow me around when I do fabulous things and record on my behalf and be like a social media person, I think that would be fine. I'd be totally, if I could relinquish all my, not my rights, but relinquish all my responsibilities with social media, I think I'd be more than happy to do that. So, but hey, anyone out there looking to be my very own social media guru, please give me a call. Or hey, hit me up on TikTok.
Help Samantha get TikTok famous by being a videographer, photographer, all that jazz. But let's get on to your book, which I'm so excited to read it. But tell us a little bit about it. And I will say that if you need to tell the story of behind the title, because you said this at a Scope event that was for colleagues that I was on. And I thought, if I don't have you tell that on my podcast, I'm going to be so upset. So tell us about the book.
Right. So this is so ironically, this is like a question that still terrifies me because I haven't refined and I haven't perfected the answer, because the book, every time I speak to someone about it and every time I revisit it to read it or have to, for the audiobook, I'm like, oh, it's about this. Oh, it's about this. Oh, it's about that. And I'm like, no, Samantha, you kind of need it in your mind to be a bit more concise. So basically how it came about was, as we all know, before the pandemic, life was going hunky-dory, like for most people. And I had the privilege of having an email from Fearne Cotton, who's a very well-known presenter in the UK. I kind of grew up watching her. I think she started presenting when she was 13, 14 years old, something ridiculous. Anyway, so her team reached out to me and said, we would love for you to be part of Happy Place Festival, which is a well-being festival. And that was like, oh my God, this is a major moment. Then obviously the pandemic hit and everything went virtual. And although I was still one of the guest speakers, it just wasn't the same. I kind of wanted, to be up on stage where what I love doing, being the center of attention, giving Fearne a massive hug on stage and living my best life. Anyway, we stayed in contact and we found out that we were both incredibly eccentric cat lovers. So we bonded over our love of cats, and we would send one another very, very sweet and very uplifting voice notes all the time. And over the pandemic, over the next couple of years, we just became good friends, which is lovely, very flattering. And she was like, look, through Happy Place, I'm expanding my brand. So every year I'm going to be doing something called an imprint. So basically all her books all her Happy Place books, she's written at least 5, I believe. They all get published by Ebury, which is part of Penguin. And she was like, look, Sam, would you like to write a book? And of course you say yes. So that's how that came about.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah. But then the book title, similarly, that was a lot of L's. Similarly? Is that right?
I've had a long day. Similarly. I feel like we've said it too many times now. It's gone weird.
You guys and girls know what's happening. Anyway, so I had an equally weird interaction with Boy George and his team. And now I've never met, this is the weirdest thing, I've never met Boy George. However, I've been living in London for about 10 years. And when I first moved to London, I was a bit of a party animal, and I would always go partying. All my friends were gay, and I would always hang out with my gay friends, and they would take me clubbing. And obviously, Boy George is a wonderful DJ as well. So he would used to be DJing a lot of the events that I would go to. And I always remember being like, oh my God, I really want Boy George to notice me. And I always used to be like, oh, I wish I could like go up to the DJ booth and say hello. And it just never happened. It was either too crowded, and you know what it's like being a wheelchair user. You don't want to get squashed just to go and meet Boy George.
Yeah.
Unbeknown to me, Boy George clearly had noticed me, and thought I was the dog's, you know what, dangly bits. And we have a few mutual friends, and he apparently has always wanted to collaborate with me on something. So he was like, why don't you come in the studio? I've got a new album coming out, and I've got one song that would be perfect, and maybe we can do something fun in the studio. But again, like Happy Place Festival, I was all ready to go in the studio. I was all ready to meet Boy George, like I was going to meet Fearne, and everything was going to be like, yay! And then it didn't happen. So Boy George and his team were like, okay, he still wants to work with you, but just this is a song, learn the lyrics, but just record yourself miming on your phone. And I was absolutely depressed because although it was a great opportunity, it wasn't what I had in my mind. I was a bit like, that's a bit naff.
Yeah.
So I had like a moment of just constant. Well, I had a few weeks of just feeling sorry for myself, and then I snapped out of it, as I often do. I always allow myself to wallow for a little while, and then I literally slap myself and go, "Samantha, you're better than this," and then get over it. But I literally say that to myself.
You sounded a little bit like Joanna Lumley there. I love that that's your like tough alter ego. I just now can't unsee that.
So I was like, right, if he wants me to just record it on my phone, I am going to record it on my phone. So I created all these, like, I think I made like 5 different characters. Because I was shielding. I was actually at my mum's shielding, and I had like some of my clothes shipped from London all the way to my mum's because I have like fake fur jackets because I was like going. I was like extra. I was like all these alter ego characters that I'd had for this video. So then I was quite impressed with myself because I kind of produced a little video. And I sent it to Boy George, sorry. And he was like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting this. I need to now step up my game. And he went on TV. And so basically the song is called You Are the Best Thing Since Sliced Bread. And he went on television and actually said, like, I actually do think Samantha is the best thing since sliced bread. And I wasn't originally going to use it for the book title because I didn't want that overlap. I didn't want people just to be like, oh, you know, she stole it from X, Y, and Z. And we played around with a few of the book titles, but nothing really stuck. And I was like, do you know what? At that time in my life when I was writing the book, I needed someone like Boy George to say to me, get a grip. You are the best thing since sliced bread. You know it, but you've just forgotten it for a while. And I guess that is the mess. That is the overarching message of the book. You know, I know that before coming on properly on live air with you, so to speak, you know, we've talked about a lot of things, and we talked about inspiration porn and this whole concept of, you know, feeling inspired by disabled people. And I kind of I wanted to unpack that. And I wanted to, in the book, you know, teach people a little bit about disability. I wanted to be very, very blunt about some of my lived experience in my life, but also, you know, saying that, you know, a lot of who I am is so multi-layered, and a lot of my success is not necessarily, you know, down to what people might think my success is, because you know like people think, oh, you must be successful because you've overcome your disability, or you and it actually isn't. And throughout the book, so the book is effectively a memoir, but I don't really like saying that because I'm like 36 years old, and I'm like, can I even say I've got a memoir? Because that sounds a little bit wanky. That sounds a little bit like, you know. But anyway,
hey, if Justin Bieber, I think he has more than one memoir, and he's what? At the time, he was probably 19. If he can have memoirs, you can have a memoir.
Okay, cool. That makes me feel good. So if it's a memoir, then fair enough. It's a memoir, and it's relatively chronological. I suppose so. But each chapter has a life lesson. each chapter is reflecting on a milestone in my life. So like the good and the bad. So I talk about grief. I talk about my move to London. I talk about, my internalized ableism. I talk about my dating. I talk about sexual assault. I talk about rejection. I talk about a whole host of things, and kind of reflecting on, okay, this is what pushed me. This is what drove me, and what have I learned? I hope I do it in a I'm not a life coach. It'd be something that I'd love to maybe look at in the future, to maybe, because I used to love doing counselling and delivering counselling. So I did a lot of night courses in counselling, ironically, but then it fizzled out. So it's definitely something that I would like to grow as, but I'm absolutely not at this moment in time a life coach. However, I don't think to share your story and to say, look, everyone is fascinated by my journey. Maybe sometimes for the wrong reasons, because they might have, had to objectify me. But I want to be like, there's actually not much difference between you and I. A lot of the things that I've experienced are what most people will experience at one time or another.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I think that's a really unique way of sort of going about talking about disability, is showing how similar our lives actually are to non-disabled people. Whereas I think, people will think that to be an activist or, an awareness raiser of disability, you have to highlight the issues that no one knows about, like, the extra costs that disabled people face or things like that. But I think that can be really powerful in sharing the similarities between us and non-disabled people. And I hate using it those words because it's so othering, obviously, which we don't approve of. But I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, particularly like I talk about body image and my journey for that, and of course it's really weird because it's funny. So when I told a few people, I probably wasn't legally allowed to, but you know what it's like. You've had a couple of glasses of wine, and then your tongue starts to wag. I told a few people, and straight away my disabled friends went, "Oh my god, it's not going to be an inspiration porn book, is it?" And then my non-disabled friends were like, yeah, but you're not going to just talk about disability because you're much more than that. And I was like, whoa, back off, all of you.
It's like it's my book, my book.
And yes, it's going to be a bit of everything, because it is, because all of that's touched my life, and I think, again, I don't shy away from talking exclusively about things like the extra costs or, kind of inaccessible housing and things like that. But I think, like you just said, I try to get the key messages of, we've all felt rejection. We've all felt, loss. We've all felt when something hasn't necessarily gone the way we wanted it to go, and we felt like a failure. We've all had body hang-ups. We've all, kind of felt like we're not worthy enough of love or accomplishment. So how is that exclusive to just disabled people? It's not.
Yeah, and I think that's so valid. And I think it's just the way that we can experience some of those things. Like, we've all been rejected for jobs, for example, and that's sort of a universal thing. But I think for us, again, I'm using this othering language I hate, but for disabled people, sometimes there's that voice in the back of your head thinking, well, is it because I disclosed I was disabled? Or, there can be disability specific instances of all of those things that you mentioned, but we do also live a life outside of disability that, comes with all the good and the bad that everyone's lives comes with.
Absolutely. And, it's not about, I said this the other day, it's not about like top trumps, like who has it harder, or, there could be non-disabled people who are discriminated against in the workplace because the boss doesn't like their accent, or, you know what I mean? But like us, it can be so hard to prove. And, because we are because living in a disabled world is so apparent, we can kind of call it out, and we can say that was ableism, that was disableism, that was, whereas, everyone in one way or another can feel all these things, but in different ways. And, it shouldn't be a competition. Of course, we need to address the gravitas of, some of the things that we are absolutely alienated from. I'm not detracting from that. But I just think what I think would benefit disabled people is to, again, like you just said, not be othered and to be seen as humans, because we're not.
Yeah. I think that's all so important, because I think that's the only way that we're going to sort of get any type of common ground with the people who don't experience the issues that we do every day. It's about making us not seem like the tragedy or the inspiration that we quite often get, put in boxes of. Yeah. It is that we are other people. You can be disabled and gay, you can be disabled and a person of color, and or a disabled person who likes country music, or just any. Yeah, no, we're not friends with them. But our lives are so multifaceted, the way that everyone else's is, and it's about making us seem more humans. We're not the superhero. We're not the tragedy.
But I don't do it in a facetious way. Like, I don't do it in a false way. Like, I just share my life, and as I read it back, I'm like, see, there's so much commonality. I talk about having asymmetric boobs. That's nothing to do with my disability necessarily. Like, most of my girlfriends have got asymmetric boobs.
Yeah. I think everyone has like one side of the body that's slightly larger. But yeah, but it is talking about things and like finding connections. That's so important. And I want to ask you a big question that
I'm going to say no straight away. No, I'm joking.
I think I've heard you answer this, but I'm really interested in getting like your take on this. But what does disability mean to you?
Gosh, I think it's something that I am incredibly proud of. Like, I think because I was born with a disability, I've never really known anything else, and I've always seen, and I speak about this in the book, and I call it like a uniqueness, because I do think it was a uniqueness, because I was definitely the only kid in school with a disability, or what I knew. I'm sure that wasn't the case. I'm sure there was probably a lot of people who were neurodivergent that I just wasn't aware of. But in my mind, I was definitely the only kid in the village with a disability. So it's always been something that has been quite an innate confidence within me. And it's only through other people who have made me think that is something to be ashamed of, or it's only as I've grown a little bit older and I realize that the system just doesn't really give a monkeys about disabled people. And, then I've been like, wow, okay, so that takes on a different meaning. But I've always genuinely, and I don't say this again like in an unsincere way, I think I've always just quite liked it. I've always been an attention-seeking person. Like, I was always one of them and really annoying children. Like, I think you call them like jazz hands. Like, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that I used to get free sweets and teddy bears and attention, and people would crowd round me. And even when I came to London, I talk about my clubbing days in London. I don't go into all details because I would probably get into a lot of trouble. But I talk about even that experience of how people were drawn to me because I was this petite, and I actually quote in the book, I was a petite, I was a tiny Kylie Minogue on wheels, that's how I felt, and so I've always kind of worked it to my advantage, as perhaps someone would, a woman with big boobs is like, what, these bad boys are gonna get me some free drinks tonight, I've kind of always, there's been obviously shitty times, where I've been like, oh, that's blatant discrimination, and that's only because I'm disabled. But I think the positives have outweighed the benefits. And I talk about my niece. So my niece actually has hearing loss in one ear. And she's like, how old is Marcia now? I think she's 10 now. I lose track. They all grow up so fast. But last time I went to go and visit her in Ireland, it was her older sister's cheerleading competition. So we went to the local sports hall to cheer everyone on. It was a big competition. So there was like hundreds and hundreds of kids. And all the kids, well, most of the kids were in like cheerleading outfits. And then their siblings were all very much like similar, like, very much like wearing the most fashionable clothes and, just being quite, I call it sheep-like, being a sheep. And then Marcia, who was probably about 7 or 8 at the time, she was really into unicorns. She wore unicorn headband, a unicorn like multicolored top, unicorn not matching to the top, unicorn leggings, unicorn trainers, and a unicorn bag. It literally looked like a unicorn had thrown up and that she had been created. Like it was like glitter and everything, right? And she just walked into that hall full of maybe 300 kids her similar age, looking completely unique and beautiful, and she just didn't give a shit. And I was just watching her going, oh my God, I love you. Like, everyone needs to be more Marcia, And it's like, why be a sheep when you can be a unicorn? And I feel like my disability is my unicorn. And I know some of you listening will probably think, ugh, what a load of tosh. But I genuinely believe that. And I think maybe, you know what, I'm going to be honest, maybe it was a coping mechanism. Because if I didn't believe in myself and if I didn't find love for myself, then I probably, other than my mother, I probably wouldn't have that, that love and adoration. So I think from a very young age, I dug deep to be like, this is who I am. This is pretty cool, and we're going to work with what we've got.
How do you get to that point of thinking that this is really cool when I think society tells us so loudly that it's such a horrible fate to, fall upon you. And, I'm sure not everyone views it as that way, but how do you get there?
And I don't all the time. This is not me saying that I wake up every morning with the sound of music, like birds twerping and, like a Disney princess. Far from it. I think, first of all, I've always had quite an innate sense of worth. Going back to the jazz hands, I think that there's something that is just within me that I was born. I was born a communicator. I was born to be center stage. I don't think this is something that has been developed. I genuinely think it was just me. So I think that has helped. I'm not going to lie. And I appreciate not everyone has that ability because some people are introverts. And that's okay too. But I definitely think that gave me the edge. But I think for me, and my sister's been quite, my older sister, Stephanie, has always been quite good at giving me advice. And I write a lot, again, about her. Sometimes I write so much about my sister, I'm a bit like, maybe like I should have credited my sister a bit more for this book. She gave me so much lovely wisdom as a youngster and growing up. I think there's about 4.5 years difference between us. And she taught me how to change my perspective on situations, even if that was just a veil, even if it wasn't reality, but if it made me believe in myself, then it was worth trying to switch. And I'll give you an example. When I was a teenager, I, like many of us, I actually went to counseling. I felt probably the lowest I've ever been in my life. Suicidal thoughts, very, very low time. That's why I'm saying, like, don't for 1 minute think that I'm like this all the time. Like I'm a human being and I feel, and I can feel trauma and sadness and depression and anxiety and, frustration like everyone else. However, how I manage it is, I think I've already talked to you about this. I do allow myself that moment of violin. I get my violins out. I throw my toys out the pram. I go, it's not fair. I fucking hate everyone. I hate my life. I hate being disabled. I do it. And I do it. Sometimes I do it with drink. Sometimes when I used to smoke, I used to chain smoke myself to death. Or sometimes I used to go clubbing and literally not come out of the club for 48 hours and, kind of suppress it like that. And now I do it by watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer on repeat. Like literally, like whatever my coping mechanism is, and eating a lot of pasta and ice cream. So I've kind of matured. Like I'm not as self-destructive, but I've definitely, I still have those moments. But I then say, right, you've given yourself that time. You need to snap out of it. And when I was about 17, my mom and my sister dragged me to IKEA, and I didn't want to go because I was, I was depressed. I didn't want to leave my bed, but they dragged me anyway. And you know what it's like when you're having a bad day, you can see people staring at you. They might not be staring more than normal, but you feel it. And I hated it, and I could feel everyone looking. And one thing about me is, even if I'm feeling down, I love fashion. So that's something I don't ever compromise. I never have. So I always like put lipstick on or something, And we came outside, and I just broke down in tears, and I was like, everyone's looking at me like, I hate everyone, and it's so shit being disabled, and I'm so ugly, and blah, blah, blah. And my sister said to me, and my sister does not have fashion sense. I know fashion is subjective, but believe me, she's just not very good. And she said to me, she went, have you ever thought that they're staring at you because your outfits are always incredible? Like, and you look beautiful. And I was like, I looked at her. First of all, I was taken aback because I was like, wow, my sister's giving me a compliment. And then I was like, oh, no, I've never thought that way. And she went, well, maybe instead of jumping to conclusions, maybe next time stop and say, yes, I look shit hot today. Or yes, I'm a badass today. And even if someone is being an ignorant prick and is staring at you because they are wankers, right? If you in your mind smile back and go, yeah, I know, I look fit. Mm-hmm. Honest to God, that is how I get through it. And I think the more you believe in yourself, I think that radiates. It's a bit like pheromones, isn't it? Like, like when women are on their periods, when I am on my period, I attract more men. Like I attract more like her, I definitely do. And I'm like, yes, my pheromones smell me. But I think that's the same as confidence. It exudes from our body, and I think people pick up on that energy. And I think, to be honest, she had a point. There might be out of maybe 5 people that stare at me, maybe one of them people are like, oh my God, I love that lipstick. I wonder where she got it from. Even the other day, I was like in my power wheelchair. And when I'm in my power wheelchair, I'm literally like top gear, like flying around like really fast.
Yeah, get the hell out of my way.
Like, it's so dangerous. And this jogger jogged past me. And then I stopped at a traffic light, and she like jogged back. She went, oh my God, I love your outfit. And then walked on it, like went on again. And I was like, oh. And then she spotted me again. She went, oh, you still look amazing. Like there's something else, like another day. And I think there are sincere people out there who don't always think badly or negatively of disabled people. Perhaps they've dated someone with a disability. Perhaps their mother's disabled. Perhaps they work with disabled people. Perhaps they're just not ignorant wankers. So I think we need to give ourselves a bit of a break now and again. And I say that, having brittle bones, so I don't say that in a literal sense. But I think we need to maybe switch our thought process from time to time, because because always feeling sad and frustrated, which we are entitled to do, because life with a disability is hard. It's not doing anyone a favor. It's not helping us in any way. Give yourself those days where give yourself those days where you literally are allowed to be fucked off at the world. Do it. Schedule it in. Like schedule it in. Have 2 days a month where you literally tell everyone to fuck off. you turn your phone off, you order junk food, and you cry, and you're like, oh, and then you go, right.
Yeah. I think that that's such good advice. But I really love that changing the perspective of what if they're looking at me for something other than what I think they're thinking. And, I just, as you were talking, I was thinking about like this time that I was on the train and someone was looking at me. And, as usual, like I got self-conscious and all of that. But then they were like, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but where did you get your boots? I love them. And I thought, oh my God, I am a trend setter.
So, isn't it?
Yeah.
True. And again, don't get me wrong. Like, so when I write about one of my hardest chapters to write about is, relationships, because I'm still, if anything in my life, I'm still self-deprivating when it comes to relationships. I still a lot of the time feel like I will never find love and I'm unlovable. And it's really weird. When I wrote the chapter, one of the final chapters, so I've been doing all these like positive things and talking positively. And then I'm like, okay, so this chapter, I just want everyone to know this chapter may sound like a real like contradiction, because what I'm about to say to you might feel like a contradiction, because I've been like, yes, what's your thought process? Do this. But again, I'm a human being, and sometimes there's areas of my life where I struggle to do that. And one of them areas is dating. And the reason why is because I've experienced a lot of trauma with dating and relationships. So, it's harder to have that swapperoo, but it's something I'm working on. It's something where I'm trying to take my own advice when relationships when I'm talking about relationships. I've done it in career, I've done it with friends, I've done it in my own self-belief, I've done it in finding inner strength, I've done it with all these other areas, so I know I'm capable of doing it. But I do definitely have deep-rooted issues with dating and relationships, and maybe that's something I need to, we was talking about therapy, that's definitely something I need to work on. But I think, again, I had to write that chapter in the book, even though it might sound a bit contradictory. And I don't want anyone to read it and go, well, she's a total liar, because now all of a sudden she's saying that when it comes to men, she closes down and she thinks she's unlovable. I didn't want it to be like that. I actually wanted it to be a really vulnerable part of the book, in the sense that saying that I don't always get it right. But I've never said that I do.
Yeah. But I think that that's really important. And it goes to, I should say that you and I were talking for a good 40 minutes before I pressed record. But I think like the thing that we were talking about was that, yes, we are disabled, but like there are so many other parts about us. And, there's so many other parts of our personality and the way that we view our lives in different ways. And I think that relationships is always, particularly when I speak to other disabled women, is a really difficult nut to crack. And, I think it is allowing yourself to be human and allowing yourself to feel that vulnerability and that lack of confidence in that area, but then trying to think, okay, well, why is this? And when we were talking before we pressed record, we talked about the perception that, particularly with someone like you who is very in the public eye and is very busy and appears to be having a very successful career, that, there's still everything else that is going on in your life. So even though you're confident in one area, it doesn't mean that you have to be confident everywhere.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I wanted to talk about my disability experience, but also, say that also, I'm not just that identity. And when I talk about my relationships, I do talk about disability-centric issues around dating and disability. So I talk about practicalities, I talk about being fetishized, I talk about all these very centric kind of issues.
That's the worst.
Well, exactly. But then I also talk about the fact that all the men in my life have been quite toxic, or I lost my father at a very young age. The strongest male role model died when I was 9. So these aren't to do with my disability, but they've all added to my troubles with and insecurities about dating. Some parts
Mm.
of some parts have come because of the issues to do with disability, and then other parts is because I've actually not seen healthy relationships growing up.
I think it made me think of this time that I decided that I was going to write an article about being on online dating as a disabled woman. And so as part of that, I had to actually do the online dating thing. And I had a friend who helped me put together my profile and help me figure out opening messages and all of that stuff. And she's also a wheelchair user. And we were going through profiles. We were sitting in a Costa and, looking at these profiles and sort of assessing them. And I went, oh, no, and you're going to be personally offended by this. But I went, oh, no, I can't swipe yes on them. They're a cat person.
Oh, no. I'm personally offended. Can we finish this conversation? No, I'm joking.
But she just went, Emma, you can't not swipe yes on them because they have a cat. And I went, why not?
Why not?
But, for just that as an example, but why can't you sort of have your own preferences and
Absolutely.
be picky, have standards and all of that in all of these other areas that have nothing to do with your disability? Yeah. Some people would think, well, you should just be swiping right on everyone. Because...
But this is it. I get a lot of attention, but I have high standards. And we were talking again before we spoke, and it's something that we're going to talk about more, but about carers and PAs and how I have got a very high standard when it comes to hiring someone. And that shocks people. And people think I'm being awkward or difficult because I'm like, that wasn't good enough. This needs to be better. That needs to be better. I'm very similar when it comes to relationships. But I'm like, I get praise. I get, adoration. I get, all this kind of, you're amazing. You're inspirational. God, well, how incredible. You've written a book. You're doing that. And is there nothing you can't do? You get all this positive, language thrown at you. And then when I turn around similarly to you and go, yeah, I won't date them because they don't really have much aspirations. Nothing against them, but I need someone to meet me intellectually, enthusiastically, you know what I mean? And that's again because I don't think we're seen as human beings. And I hope if this book in any way is a book to educate, and that's not the main reason, but on disability, but I hope in a byproduct of the book will hopefully enlighten a few people and potentially break down a few of those barriers,
Yeah. And I think it's so important to try and do that. But what I love about the way that you're doing it is from your own experience, your own lived experience. It's not coming from a place of I'm just delivering a talk, which can in itself be very valuable. But, talking about the Equality Act 2010, that's great. And that's really informative. But I think it's so powerful coming from a place of lived experience when you're trying to address issues and eventually knock down barriers for other disabled people. It just humanizes it.
Yeah.
And so we talked about you as a child being like Little Miss Jazz Hands. So who would you say were your role models when you were growing up?
It's going to make me sound completely narcissistic and egotistical, but I didn't really have any. I think Buffy was a big part of my life. But prior to that, again, and you'd say about, I had this innate sense of worth and I looked up to myself. I genuinely did. And I think from a young age, and I don't want to say anymore because I don't actually want to give too much of the book away, but there was one of the chapters I write about an experience I had at primary school. So I was probably only, I think my dad was still alive. So under 9 years old. And I had a horrendous experience at primary school. And in that moment, I came to realize that some people, not all, some people have no respect and even despise disabled people. And in that moment, I think that gave me strength because I was like, okay, I need to be strong for me and I need to look up to me because the reality is I'm in for a bit of a rocky ride. And I suppose that's quite sad to think that little Samantha felt that, but actually, instead of like knocking my confidence, I think it did the opposite. I think it gave me, because I've always had this "I'll show you" attitude, which again I go into the book, which isn't always long term effective. It serves a purpose to kind of prove the world that you can, or you should, or and have that fire in your belly. And I think that can be very positive in some situations. But what I'm finding now is, living life to not to prove anyone, to live life that makes you happy. I think that's where I am now. But I think it's a journey that we all have to kind of go through. But again, proving we all, irrespective of who we are, we all kind of have that fire at some point in our life, whether it's, proving to an overbearing parent who doesn't, or the fact that your older sibling is a doctor and your parents want you to follow their footsteps, but you want to be a singer, or, you are, whatever that is, or whether you're part of a religious faith where there's pressure to be a certain way, or whether, your sexuality dictates you have to behave a certain way. So we can all relate to those pressures of wanting to prove to society or whoever that we can, or we will, or we are worthy. But yeah, I think the only other disabled person I saw was Dame Tammy Thompson. And I remember seeing her. There was an interview, and not for her sporting, because I was not interested in sports at all. But I remember her doing an interview talking about giving birth to her daughter. And again, I must have only been very young, and I was like, "What? We can have kids?" And and that's what sticks in my head. Like that, I saw that on TV.
Yeah.
But apart from that, no one disability wise. I think obviously I felt very inspired by other people in my life and my family, and my sister inspired me. My sister was very much like me, in the sense of we both have this innate confidence and go get attitude. So she always inspired me. But yeah, I don't think anyone with disability. I think I've always just spent so much time and effort in just growing myself.
No, that's really valid. And I can't wait to read that section of the book where you realize that that you had to be there and be the role model for yourself. I think that that's fascinating. And I, on the point about, Tandy Gray Thompson and having the child, what I will say, shameless self-promo for another episode, but the episode actually came out today, so we're recording this at the end of June.
Okay.
The episode that came out today with Kay Ashton is all about having or going through pregnancy through IVF and being a single parent by choice with a disability.
Wow.
So
I can't wait for that one. That's so interesting.
And because very like you, I was under the impression that, well, one, I didn't realize it was like medically possible. And then when I saw someone who had the same condition as me, who had children, and it was in the time, it was back in the States, but it was talked about on the news because so many professionals were advising her not to do it for medical reasons, not because, she wasn't capable of, being a good mom, but it was that what the pregnancy would do to her already, weak body. And it was just really fascinating to see that other side of the narrative. So, I mean, definitely check out that.
I will.
Thank you for that. But when you were talking about that I'll show you attitude, I have to admit, the first thing that came to mind was that, honestly, it sounds exhausting. And I remember this article that you wrote recently about admitting burnout with a disability. And if you don't read Samantha's articles for the Metro, please do. But how...
They're a bit like Marmite. Some people love them, some people really don't like them. But hey ho.
But I find them so refreshingly honest. But I wanted to talk to you about this I'll show you, and this constant feeling that you need to prove people wrong, or you need to prove people's perceptions of disability wrong. Like, how does burnout come into that? Because it's something I'm seeing come up ever so slightly more in the disabled community, but in my opinion, not enough.
It's again, I think you need to separate my disability identity from just Samantha, the go-getter, aspirational human being. So, it's this, the whole narrative, you're either a Paralympian or you're a benefits flounder. And, how we always kind of say, there's more of us and we are like, interlinked. And I said, who was I speaking to the other day? And I said about, I am very mindful that I don't want to be a pin-up for all the disabled people. So I don't want to be the standard, the benchmark for other disabled people. And I'm very, very aware that I would hate it if someone were to go to someone and go, why can't you be like Samantha? At the end of the day, it's in my blood. I think it's just in my character to be a person I'm a bit like Monica from Friends. I have to constantly be in competition with myself. And then so that's me at my core, right? That's me. Then you add on the disability element. So then people underestimate you. So then competitive Samantha, who's already like, I'm going to go, I'm going to do this. And then gets people going, oh, she won't. Oh, no, she won't. So then I've got that going. I'll fucking show you. I'll show you. So I've got that on top of it. And what you end up getting is burnout. And I think the fire that I've always had and that determination and that kind of show you attitude has got me out of some very sticky moments and has got me through some very dark times. So I like that, Samantha. But again, what I write in the book is I'm at a point in my life now where I need to be more selective when I bring that Samantha out. Because at one point, I was like on adrenaline. What's it called? The drug for
it's not Adderall, is it?
Adderall, yeah. I've never had it, but I'm just saying. I always hear like American programs going, "I'm on Adderall." I'm like wired.
Yeah. What was that accent?
I don't know. Was that not an American accent? I thought that was a good American accent. But yeah, I think I felt like that all the time. And it was like push, push, push. And the problem is, it's a little bit like yes people. Like people warm to that Samantha more because they like to have the inspirational go-getter. And being the character that I am inherently, that was like a drug for me. Having that positive reinforcement has been a drug for me. Having people be like, she's so determined. And now I'm a little bit like, but for whose benefit now? Whose benefit? Because no one is there to pick up my pieces when I do burn out and my carer doesn't turn up. So now I'm working on recognizing that part of me is not a negative part, but it needs to be used in a more manageable way. And I need to set more boundaries so that I can actually enjoy other elements of my life. Like no one believes me when I say that. So I'm going to be moving out of London in the next maybe 18 months because I just need to be in nature. I need to be, I feel like I've done London. I feel like I've proved my points. I feel like I've done it.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, because I love doing? I love pottering around. I love reorganizing my drawers. I love I'm German, so this is kind of what we do. We're very arts and crafts, like I like having people, I like having someone over for afternoon tea and getting my napkins out. And I just recently bought new napkin holders, like rings, like so this genuinely brings me so much joy. And people don't believe me when I say that because all they see is this Samantha. And that's fine because that's what I project out onto the world. But when I actually say I am my happiest, literally watching Buffy, scrolling on like looking through Ideal Home magazines, like literally, that is me. I am quite again, I think this comes with an addictive personality. I'm extremes. And at the moment, I guess I guess with the past 2 years and how disabled people have been treated, I guess I'm just leaning a little bit more towards doing more things for myself rather than pushing myself to the edge for other people.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking about this time when I was at university and I wasn't well, but I thought, oh, it's fine. I'll go. It's just for one tutorial. I'll do a 2-hour commute each way and do the one lesson and then come home. Well, I came home, I was septic. So it's like, well, you idiot, what were you doing? But at that moment, it was like, oh, I'll just push through. I'll push through.
Yeah.
And I think it's only when you get a bit older that you realize what your limits are and you stop being as angry at them.
Yeah.
I think when I finished university, it was a really bitter pill to swallow to realize that I couldn't commute into London full time for work because I physically couldn't do it. I don't know a huge amount of non-disabled people that could do it, let alone. Yeah. And I was really angry at that. And now, with the 2 years of the pandemic and obviously not commuting, I'm thinking, I don't want to do that again. It's not worth it. But I really, like when you were saying that you've proven that you can do London, I immediately thought, well, when I was telling people I was going to uni in London, and commuting, people were shocked and, questioning, can she do it? Should she do it? Would she do it? And I thought, well, I'm going to, it's just an obvious, I'm going to do this. And it's.
I think sometimes we need to push ourselves, like even though on the surface we probably do it to prove the world, to prove the haters, to prove the disbelievers that we can, actually then they might in the long run be doing us a favor because we can now reflect and be like, do you know what? I'm still proud of myself. I'm sure you're still proud of yourself for seeing what was possible. But now we're in a place where I don't speak for you, obviously, but now I'm in a place where I feel like I don't feel like a failure if I say, no, I don't want to take that opportunity because I don't want to do the commute, or I don't feel like a failure or I'm letting anyone down or myself down if I turn down opportunities, or if I say to people, actually, I don't want to go and meet you in a park because you're all going to the park and I know full well that not only is that going to cost me £60 in a taxi, I'm going to be sat in a park in my sweaty wheelchair with no shade and no disabled toilet while you all get drunk. And that's fine. That's fine for me to say that. And I don't have FOMO. You know what I mean? Whereas there was one point where I would constantly sacrifice and push. But I will also mention, you and I are in many respects in a privileged position. I find I'm in a privileged position because I can be more selective.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
We are both in employment, and that comes with flexibility, because now I think, I can turn around and go, no, I'm not. If you won't accommodate my needs, like doing a virtual session, then I just won't take the job. And I know that there are many people out there that is not an option for financial reasons, for whatever.
Yeah, I think it's so important to acknowledge that privilege. And I was thinking about saying it as you were saying, the feeling of I'm going to turn this one down, thanks. I thought the same thing. And I am very aware of, how lucky we are to be in the positions that we are, not to say that we haven't worked our asses off to get there, because I think you and I both definitely have, and so many others have as well. But it is a privilege to be able to turn down opportunities. And, just like doing this podcast, I've reached out to people to be on it as a guest. And when a disabled person says to me, I would love to, but at the moment I'm prioritizing paid opportunities, I think good for you. I respect that completely. I wish I was in a position to be able to pay guests, but financially, I'm self-funding this project. But, it's looking out for what you need and what your priorities are, and more power to you for whatever those decisions are that you want to make for yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think we can, irrespective of what our circumstances, I think we can still set boundaries, even if they're little ones. We can still, they don't have to be as big as saying, well, I don't need to take that, work opportunity, or I can, be as blunt as saying no, like pay me or not, and that takes that even I have worked on that, and now I'm very similar. Like, I know my worth a bit more, but that takes time, and that takes, experience, and that takes failure, and that takes, evolving. So that's fine. But I think everybody can take a little bit. Everyone can take a bit more self-care. Everyone can maybe sit back and look at things, and even if it means writing a list of, right, what are my priorities, and maybe then it will become clear that, you can afford to, have that 1 hour extra in bed resting on a weekend, or, you know what I mean? So I think we can do things to set our boundaries, no matter how big or small. And I think over time, hopefully, we will find what is best for us, psychologically, physically, mentally. But it's taken me 10 years. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I've learned so much, and I don't always get it right.
I have to say, though, that it was when I was working at Muscular Dystrophy UK that I first, I think that was when you and I first connected.
Yeah.
And I was working with you on a body image campaign, and we talked about payment. And honestly, I think you were the first person that sort of made me think, hang on. Like, if you're not in the sort of traditional working situation, like I was with MDUK, like you can get paid for doing things like that, and you don't just have to be grateful for the opportunity. But it was like the way that you sort of explained it to me was I really appreciated it, but it made me think about adding more worth to my own time and the projects that I want to be involved in. And, I can say now as a blanket statement that I think everyone can agree with is disabled people do too much for free. And, people shouldn't. And I say that as I'm, you're doing this podcast, for me for free, but, I'm not a big organization. And I think if you're working with an organization that has resources, then do ask when you're in conversations about a project. Do they have a budget to pay the talent, the experts, and all of that?
Exactly. If they can pay for a building, and they can pay for a caterer, and they can pay for a photographer, then they can pay you something. And I think for me, it's more the principle, because I work with a whole host of different organizations. Some things are really well paid, and some things people are like, I can literally give you £50. But I think for me, it's the assumption that you would work for free. And if someone was to say to me, Samantha, I literally did something, and part of me felt a bit bad. I did something for a local organization. They were like a network group for people with learning disabilities and intellectual disabilities. But I even said to them, I said, have you got, because they wanted 2 hours of my time. And I said, have you got, a budget? And I think they paid me £50. And I felt, I had genuinely, after talking to them for 2 hours, because they were such a lovely group and I loved doing it, I did feel a little bit like, oh, I don't want to take any money off you. But then I thought, no, because I'm making a point. Because I might have had to pay for a carer to come and help me. I mean, even irrespective of that, but you know what I mean? There are added costs when you're disabled. But don't get me wrong, I'm having issues at the moment, and this is full transparency, with broadcasters. I'm having issues where broadcasters will approach me with an idea. And obviously I'm doing presenting. I want to get more presenting work. I feel that is an area that I will flourish, but I feel very stifled in that area. And what happens is I get a lot of producers contacting me, pitching their ideas, and then going, can you jump on a call and talk about it? So, of course, in your mind, you're going to say yes, you're going to oblige, because if they like you, then hopefully that will mean you get a presenting role, and they will sit there and talk to you and get all your contacts, all your information, because I do consultancy as well, and I'll talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and I effectively shape the content for their program, and then I don't get anything. I don't get any looking. And I said to my agent, now I said, I'm stopping doing it. Because I feel used by a lot of the broadcasters, who get me on in a consultancy role effectively, because they're picking my brain about who's the best people to contact. What's your take on this? When actually what they should be doing is giving these programs, disability-centric programs, giving them to disabled producers to produce, so that they then don't have to come. Then they don't have to come to people like me. And if they do come to people like me, it's for a proper role.
Yeah, I think it just made me think of, at the minute I'm binge watching ER.
Okay.
And you always see, like, in the credits, the medical consultant or the medical experts that they'll, like, check things for accuracy. Yeah. And it's really no different for disability in, anything that we get asked to work on, whether that be entertainment, which is the field that you're in, or if it's policy or, inclusion, that type of thing, which is what I do. It's, we are experts, even if a huge amount of our expertise comes from lived experience, like, we are still experts, and you should be expected to be paid for that.
And I think that because I do consultancy and I get paid work from consulting, it's actually, consultancy is where I get most of my income from. It's a form of teaching, and I used to be a teacher. So this is something I do. But I think with broadcasters, I think they can be just very, very cheeky. That's the problem. And me, this is what I'm saying, I don't always get it right. I let them take advantage, because in my mind I go, I have to say yes to them so that potentially I might get a presenting role.
Yeah, even though obviously I'm not a broadcast person or whatever, but I know that I didn't respect you before, but when you said about pay, I thought, wow, I do really respect you for saying that, because not only did it give me enlightenment as, a young disabled person at the time, but also it's like, you value what you do enough to be like, hey, I think that you should at least consider paying me for this. And that really makes you think, wow, what they're going to contribute. Like, if they believe it's really good, I'm sure it is really good. And, don't downplay that. And yeah, I think that's so important. So that's the advice that you gave me, sort of inadvertently. But what advice would you give to young Samantha and then other people who are like you right now?
And I think perhaps care a little bit less on what people think. I think that advice that my sister gave me, if she would have been able to give that to me maybe 5 years earlier, that would have been so beneficial. So that little swapperoo, change your mindset. Even if it is a coping mechanism, it can work wonders. Because like you just said, that woman really wanted to know where your shoes were from. Don't underestimate people and don't overestimate people. Always go into a situation with an open mind. And I think that is true for any encounter or experience, and I'm the worst for it. I'm a really big worrier. I can procrastinate. I can go away thinking, oh my God, no one's liked me, or they all hate me. And so, but I do. And like I said, I do allow myself, but it's catching it. And I think it's about being present. It's about being mindful, if that's what you want to call it. It's about going, okay, I'm thinking like this because of this, but actually, am I giving the situation enough credit? Am I going down the negative route because I'm programmed to go down that, or is there another way of thinking or looking at this experience?
That's such good advice. And I think I'm very similar in, it sounds really bad, but I think sometimes when you're disabled, life can almost teach you to be cynical and like pessimistic, which I don't. It's not an attractive quality of myself. Like it's something I know that I don't particularly like, but it's something that's just sort of a learned behavior. But I think if we can try and challenge that when we notice ourselves doing it, then that's the first step to sort of going, what if they're staring at me because I look awesome?
And also, I'm sure we've all been in a situation where you've had a bad day, or your goldfish has just died, or you've had an argument with someone and someone thinks you're pissed off at them, and actually it's nothing to do with them, it's just you having a bad day. So I think, we just need to approach that with every situation. Try and be kind to yourself a bit more, because not everything might be as clear as you might think in your head. And even, like I said, even if that person is being horrible, and even if, it is ableist, or even, it is overt discrimination, kind of giving that smile back to someone who's rudely looking at you, that is empowering in itself. That's what I do. Because actually, it kind of really throws the balance off. It throws that kind of, so this sounds really awful. So I got, this delivery guy, very quickly before I leave you, this delivery guy the other day started giving me, telling me how rubbish my life is because God made him perfect and God made me disabled. And he was like going on and on and on and on and on, shaking his head at me, going, it's terrible, look at you, it's terrible. I'm like, just give me my food. But I actually said to him, I'm not this person, because I try and be kind. And I went, don't worry, mate. I probably make more money in a day than you do in a month. So I'm fine. And I just thought, it was quite a bitchy thing to say, but I just thought, screw you. If you think that that's appropriate way to behave with me, I'm going to also throw it back in your face.
But in a weird way, it's also you're obviously challenging this perception that he had of you, but he probably thinks that like you're probably just huddled in a corner crying over how awful your life is. Not that, you're an incredibly successful, career-minded person and, do have all of these amazing opportunities, and probably do make more money than him. But I think that it's allowing yourself to have those moments every once in a while, because no one is perfect, literally no one. And if you don't handle a situation the way that when you're thinking about it in a couple of days' time, you're like, I wish I'd done that, then that's fine. Like, cut yourself some slack.
Absolutely. I did go away thinking like, Samantha, that was really savvy, because I'm normally not that savvy. But if that made him go away and go, okay, wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, or thinking maybe I should have handled that differently. Yeah. But before I let you go, tell our wonderful listeners where they can find the book, and tell them where they can get it, what formats they can get it. And also, my second guest on the podcast, Chloe Timms, her book just came out. And I wanted to do a post.
How dare the disabled people be having books out?
Yeah. And so I texted her and I said, which way of people buying it is going to make you the most money? And then I'll push people towards that. What do you want?
Unfortunately, so this is a book. Very, very snazzy. You are the
beautiful.
Best. It's available now for pre-order. It will be available properly on the 21st of July. So not that long. So pre-orders are very, very important, because apparently, when you get like on the top 10 list or whatever, like on the Times magazine, it's to do with pre-orders, because the sales of your book are calculated from the first week of sales. But my book is out on a Thursday, so technically I only have 2 days of sales. So they only do that. So pre-sales are really important. However, my agent, my PR people are going to be like, you shouldn't say this, Samantha. However, I got like a lump sum of money for writing. So in theory, don't worry about like I won't be getting any extra, but what it would do would just be that, the more interaction and the more people like the book and share the book and buy the book means that I get to do more nice things like go and talk about it on TV or on podcasts. So I get paid in that way, if that makes sense. But it's on Amazon, it's on all the other kind of well-known retailers. There is going to be a Kindle. I've done the audiobook. There's Kindle. There's going to be paperback, because obviously hardbacks I appreciate are more expensive. But there is going to be paperback and all different forms. I tried to make it as accessible as possible for everyone. So there you go. Go and treat yourself. And be nice and be kind to me. Be kind. And I apologize anyone listening to the audiobook version, because it was hard. Like I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like it was much more enjoyable than I first thought. But by God, is reading out loud difficult? Sorry, it really is. It's like really. Do you know what I mean? It's like it really is, because you kind of forget parts you've written and you're like, oh, okay. So you've got to go back, and you don't have that many opportunities to go back because it's like quite quick paced. So I wholeheartedly apologize in advance if you're. And then at one point I started to cry. I know. So it's a bit of a, I don't know. It's going to be a whirlwind, and some words I just had such difficulty pronouncing. I was like, how do you say that again? So it's going to be a laugh. If anything, it will make you laugh.
Well, I am so looking forward to reading it and listening to it. I just want to say a massive thank you for taking so much time out of your day to come on this podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. Can I take a selfie of us?
Please do. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Wheelchair Activist with Samantha. I am so pleased to wrap up the first season of the Wheelchair Activist podcast with her. It has been such a pleasure speaking with her, and I cannot wait to listen to her book. Before you go, if you liked season 1 of The Wheelchair Activist, don't worry, we are coming back with the season 2 in September. But as always, if you are able to donate anything so that we can continue to maintain very high standards of accessibility for this content, that would be absolutely amazing. We have a Patreon and a GoFundMe set up, so every little bit helps. And thank you so much for listening to any of the episodes you've heard in season 1, and I will see you in September for season 2. Bye.